Okay. What's up, everybody? Okay, so y'all go ahead. If you are in the live chat, please go ahead and give me a thumbs up so that we can get this party started. Let me go ahead and see who's in the live before we even talk about all the things. Okay, so we got Common Sense in the building. What's up, bro? I see Rashawn. Hello again. Shakia. Hello, hello, hello. Pastor Booker, one of my all-time favorite people in the world. Thank you for joining tonight. And Victor Wiggins in the building. What's up, y'all? Okay, so social media, there was just a lot that happened this weekend, and I just felt like, y'all know I like to talk about these different topics, just give my little 2 cents or whatever. But so I'm just gonna get straight into it. So I wake up, I think it was that Saturday? Or was it Sunday? I can't remember. But Jamal Bryant posted this video of William Murphy becoming a Q dog, and I'm just thinking, now why would he do that? Why in the world would William Murphy do that? And then my second thought was, well, why wouldn't he do it? Because it's William Murphy. But I know a lot of people don't know much about Greek life, but if y'all been following me for, I don't know, a couple years, y'all know that I have done quite a few videos on the topic. And I just think that Christians should stay far away from the organizations. Now, if you're in one, I'm not saying you're not a Christian. I'm not saying you're demon possessed or that you're worshiping some Greek god. But I do think if you are a part of those types of organizations, you are probably in some type of compromise as far as how you had to get in there. And a lot of times just the elitism and syncretism and all those things, I think it leads people further away from Christ than it does a good job of bringing people to Christ. So anyway, that's the short end. If you want a more thorough explanation as to why I don't think Christians should be a part of organizations, just check out some of my old videos. So there's that. But this was just very interesting to me because I'm like, of all the fraternities to join, you're going to become an Omega. Now, I don't know if y'all saw, I interviewed 2 Omegas maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And some of the things that they went through just to get into the organization were quite disturbing. So definitely go check those out. But if you look online, like the Omegas have this reputation for being the nastiest of the nastiest, right? So it's just like, I'm not a fan of any of the organizations for the reasons that I've already mentioned, but you would think, man, if you're going to join one, like, can you at least join one that's not so, you know what I mean? And if y'all need an example, this may or may not be a family friendly show tonight. So if you got kids in the room, you might want to either send them to bed or shut their ears for this next section. Oh, hold up. Let me read this right quick. Common Sense says, let's see what Common Sense says. Why I can't make this bigger? There we go. They said, as a denounced denier but a believer, it's problematic to me that any pastor is not preparing people for eternity on these last days. I'm assuming you're saying how's pledging to me, him pledging to me shows how he's not focused on the gospel. Yeah, I think there's just so much deception. Christians don't half know the gospel these days. People don't know what their gender is. People just lost. So why in the world of all things to focus on, you're going to join a Greek fraternity? There's bigger fish to fry, my guy, right? But I mean, William Murphy, for the last few years, his behavior has just gone from strange to just like, well, you just stopped caring a long time ago now, didn't you? Because I remember, I think it was during COVID, they'd had the outside communion and he was playing Meg the Stallion while people were driving up to get their communion cups. And I'm like, what in the world is going on here? Then either last year or the year before, it was the crazy New Year's Eve service where they was basically turning the church into a club. That was strange. So yeah, just a lot of weird things happening with William Murphy. But for anyone who's not really familiar with the reputation of Omega Psi Phi, I just wanted to kind of give you a visual. First of all, sorry, I only showed you a little clip of his coming out performance or his coming out show, probate, whatever y'all want to call it. So here's the longer version.
In the 12th position, a very divine number. He ain't got no job. Y'all know who he is.
some of these comments that y'all are leaving, I think are interesting. Shakia says, I think the male fraternities are worse than the female fraternities or sororities. I can't, speak on that from experience, but a lot of y'all know, since I did have, when I was in college, I went to an interest meeting because I was interested in joining one of these sororities. And that was one of the most traumatic experiences of my college life for a lot of different reasons. So I think it's just a different type of bad. Like, it just seems like with the girls, things are so personal, and it's just so like, they just nitpick for the sake of nitpicking. It's just very catty. Whereas the men, it can get like physical and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, some of the girls get hazed in some pretty bad ways too. So I think it just depends on the chapter and the school and all that you go to. Something that can go from being just, a extracurricular activity. It can be that simple, or it can go as far as to ruining your life or ending your life in some cases. So anyway, yeah, these organizations, you got to be real careful if you're going to do that. Common Sense says, but let's be honest, do a lot of his type even take their profession literal? Okay. I think I missed a couple of comments. Blasity. Your favorite Jersey girl says, when God calls you to do one thing, but you still want to fulfill your college dream. I mean, he is the pastor at the Dream Center, right? Right. Okay. So anyway, so he did his Omega Psi Phi coming out thing, and everybody's talking about it on social media, but Omega Psi Phi is just a very interesting organization. As I said before, look at some of the footage here. And again, if you got kids around, you might want to take them to another room, because this is going to be kind of bad.
She went to her cover to give up. You don't know more. All right. And when she went over, the rover took over and gave up upon the window. All right. She was a nasty, acute dog. She was nasty, acute dog. And you. I said just the other day, I was on the yard. I was the happiness that he never saw. And in this bitch, yeah, she walked up to me. She said, can you send it out in the HD? I said, HD, bitch, that's high definition. I look at that as a bitch, so I shoot a position. She was that thick, and HD,
All right, so sorry, that ain't supposed to be there right now. We're supposed to be right here. Those clips, some of y'all probably like, nah, Miss Titus, that wasn't even that bad. I could have gone way worse, but I think what we saw was bad enough, because these organizations, they appropriate Black church culture, and they want to say on one hand, they're like, yeah, we're Christian organizations, and my pastor is this, and my first lady is that. Everybody's in organizations are Christians or whatever. But the organizations are kind of known for vulgar behavior, for just, treating people mean, for hazing. And there's a lot of just syncretism with a lot of this religious stuff. Like, they want to do all these religious things, but not be called a religion. But I don't know, hymns and all this church stuff and oaths. I don't think any of this is really compatible with Christianity. But even without all the religious stuff, just the worldview. They teach these young men, to kind of be dogs, to treat women like dogs, to not even respect their own selves on campus and stuff. They're not really leading anybody to, pursue holiness or righteousness or Christianity or anything like that. So William Murphy, it's a no for me, player. So anyway, that's basically my 2 cents on that. Let me see if there's anything else in the chat that's interesting. Got to be physically fit and mentally weak. Oh, that's a good way to put it. And I know that's probably a broad brush, because I do know some really amazing people in the organizations, and some of us have these conversations. Some of them would even say like, hey, Miss Titus, I'm in it and I love my org, but I see why you have your concerns. I ain't leaving it, but I understand where you're coming from. And some people just want to completely write me off. And it's you're just saying that because you're jealous. You're just saying that because they didn't pick you, whatever. It's like, okay, don't think about anything that I'm saying as far as why I don't think they're compatible with Christianity. Just, try to clown me or whatever. It's terrible. Okay, what else is in here? Common sense says frats and sororities are religions. That's my feeling as well. I would categorize them that way. And there's a few books you can read on the subject. It's like, okay, Walter Kimbrough's book, Black Greek 101, he talks about their ties to Freemasonry. And usually when I talk to pastors who've investigated Freemasonry, people who have written books on Freemasonry, they would agree that Freemasonry is not compatible with Christianity. And these D9 orgs, not to say that other fraternities and sororities that aren't, D9, that they're necessarily better or worse. But I'm just saying this is the type that I specifically did research on. And they all say like everything goes back to Freemasonry, and they're kind of mimicking Freemasonry in a sense. It's different, but a lot of similarities, a lot of things to be concerned about. What's up, Carter C. Goodson? What's up? All right, we got 145 people watching and only 20 people who like the video. Let's get these likes up, people. Okay, Pastor Booker, what you got to say? What have I been missing all of these years? I feel deprived. Bro, I don't think you've been missing not a thing. Okay, so anyway, William Murphy, another reason I wanted to kind of talk about him is because I think that Pastor Philip Mitchell, who, people love 2819 Church, Pastor Phil, and I understand why. I think part of the reason why he floated to my algorithm was in response to some of the shenanigans that you see going on with the William Murphys and Jamal Bryants of the world. So I just kind of wanted to show this throwback clip. This is, I think, the first thing that I saw from Philip Mitchell, and I liked it so much that I remember sharing this on TikTok. So let's go here. Okay, so we just gonna play this little clip from maybe a year or so ago. Okay.
Because when I consider the foolery of what I've seen in the church this week, I don't care. I am compelled to not remain silent.
Sorry, I forgot I had it on double speed, and I want y'all to be able to hear exactly what he's saying. So let's bring it to 125 speed, something like that. I think that'll be easier on the ears. I'm sorry, guys. Okay.
When I see the foolery of what is happening in the American church, especially in the black context, the nonsense that we pastors keep pushing across this pulpit, the unsuspecting sheep that don't hold pastors accountable. With your absenteeism and your lack of funding, that's how you hold a man accountable. I won't come, I won't give. We clear out. We won't listen to theological garbage. You will not lie to me from that pulpit. You will not desecrate God's house, and I bring my family back the next week. What kind of nonsense is that? You don't need marijuana or weed to get black men to come to a church. The Holy Spirit is strong enough to do that. I'm about to speak this morning. Let me say this again. I don't judge no man, but I'm going to call out false prophets. You don't need weed or marijuana or no drug to draw black men to the gathering. The Holy Spirit is strong enough to do that. What you trying to say about our black men? That the only way they will come to church is to beguile them with a 20 bag? When I was driving here this morning, I seen a young jitterbug on the street. He had to be no older than 14, bopping with his headphones, a straight ninja, like me when I was his age. And I beat my horn at him, handed him an invite flyer to our church, and immediately I began to pray for him. Lord, the way you rescued me when I did not know you, rescue this young man. I pray before the year is over, since he lives right up the street, he'll walk right through that door. I don't gotta bribe him with a bag of weed. I bribe him with prayer and the Holy Spirit. Look, we're not gonna be silent. I don't need to feel a sacred place. These rooms across the nation, look at me. Give me this camera, control room. I want this one right here. Control room, give me this camera right here, one. These rooms across the nation are supposed to be sacred places where the Spirit of God dwells, where souls can be really saved and regenerated and born again, where the gospel must be proclaimed. These rooms are supposed to be sacred places. We don't gotta desecrate them with entertainment and secular music. I got Christian hip-hop artists that can do that. I don't care. Somebody gonna stand up for Jesus. I am not gonna sit down. I got Sean D for that. Christian hip hop.
Okay, so we're not going to belabor the point. That was the first thing that I saw from Philip Mitchell, and I was like, wow. Because, in Atlanta, again, you got your William Murphys, you got your Jamal Bryants, who else? You just got a lot of wacky churches that aren't really teaching a lot. And I'm sure there's plenty of good churches that just don't get the recognition. Was Charles Stanley in Atlanta? I can't remember. I'm sure there was some. So there was also a Cornerstone Church. I heard a lot of good things about that church. So I know there were good churches there, but it just seems like, the social media pastors that will go viral would typically go viral for really bad things, really silly things, or a church scandal, or they're getting famous not because they're necessarily doing something nasty, but because their teaching is so bad and people love it. So this was really refreshing. It was very, very refreshing. So it was at this point that Philip Mitchell kind of got on my radar. And then I listened to his interview on, I think he was on the Craze. No, it was Ezekiel. Y'all know Brother Ezekiel. He was on Ezekiel's podcast. He was on the Perry's podcast, and he was on the Lecrae's podcast. And at that point, I was just like, okay, something just felt a little bit, there was just certain things he said in those interviews that I just wasn't really vibing with or whatever. So that's when he got on my radar. But so I did a little bit of background research on him, and some of this came from people in the comments section who were like, I know Philip Mitchell. I went to Bible college with him. I was like, what Bible college you go to? And so we about to find out right now. So let's go here. I'm going to turn it on me first for a second so I can get my little self together. And then we're going to go there. All right. And while I'm looking that up, let me see. What else y'all got to say? Carter C. Goodson says, I honestly think it's something wrong with Jamal Bryant, depraved my... Yes, I would agree with you. Jamal Bryant and William Murphy, if anybody watching me right now goes to those churches, please find yourself another church. I don't even think the Dream Center has a statement of faith on their website, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know about Jamal Bryant's church. Jamal Bryant sound like he talk more about politics, and bad politics at that, than he does about the gospel. You know what I'm saying? Oh, okay. Your favorite says she's a digital disciple here at 2819. All right, sis. Well, welcome to the chat. I'm going to try not to offend anybody, but if we disagree on some things, just know we might disagree. And that don't mean I love y'all any less. And hopefully you won't love me any less either. Okay. All right. So I wanted to go here. All right. So this is a little bit about Pastor Philip Mitchell. Okay. Philip Mitchell is a native of Queens, New York, and this is from several years ago. It looks like this was from 2021. Okay. He's the founder and lead pastor of Victory Church. So I think before 2819, he was pastor in Victory Church, and then something about the COVID Victory Church kind of didn't work out. So then they revamped as 2819. Okay. So lead pastor of Victory Church, a lively Christ-centered gathering in Atlanta, an honors graduate from North Carolina Central University. Pastor Philip also holds a degree in pastoral and church leadership from Valor Christian College. Now, I don't know if y'all are familiar with Valor Christian College, but that was founded by Rod Parsley. Y'all know, one of the leaders in the Word of Faith Prosperity Gospel Movement. Now, Valor is an accredited school. Rod Parsley went to Liberty, so it's not like we're saying that his degree doesn't mean anything. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I do think it's interesting that he got his degree from a school that was founded by a prosperity gospel type, Word of Faith type preacher, and you see a lot of that charismatic Pentecostal influence on the church. And I'm not even saying that's bad. Like Pentecostalism. Actually, y'all, I'm reading a book on it. Let me go back here. Reading a lot of books these days on Pentecostalism, and I did not really know what the definition of it was. I was just like, when I thought Pentecostalism, I just think that those are those people that do all this spiritual stuff. But from what I gather, the definition of Pentecostalism is really just people who believe in second baptism, so baptism of the Holy Spirit, and speaking in tongues, but they are also very evangelistic and all that. So there's nothing inherently wrong with Pentecostalism or charismatic churches or whatever. So I did want to put that out there. But I just thought that was a very interesting thing, right? Okay, so we saw that clip from back in the last year or whatever, when he went viral because he was basically telling Jamal Bryant and William Murphy about themselves and their terrible antics. And I couldn't agree with Philip Mitchell more on that. But that leads us to this weekend where they went viral for another reason. And let me go ahead and pull that up. I'm gonna put that one away. Okay. So there's some trouble in 2819 Paradise, and we're gonna check that out. Okay. I'm gonna go there. All right.
Our church has been growing by the thousands for the past couple months, to the point that we don't have space for cars or people. And for us, I think we recognize that Christ is gathering a people to himself because time is running out. And that there is a cry coming from the wilderness. Regardless if they don't understand him, they persecute him, they lie. There is a cry coming from the wilderness in which God is gathering his people in this city and in this hour and around the country. And we feel that what we are a part of is a move of God, a revival. But there are powerful forces who are not followers of Christ. And they do not feel what we feel. And they do not believe in what we believe in. And they are working overtime to shut down these gatherings. They are here today. Some of them are in this room, they're in the building, they're in the street.
Are eggs good for dogs?
Of course, they always want to hit me with these annoying ads right when it's getting good. But I saw there was another person in the live chat who said, "This is my first time catching live." Well, hello and welcome, Paris Capri. And I can't remember who the other person was, but thank you so much for joining. Let's see if we can get past this ad. At least it's not an inappropriate ad this time.
Raw egg or cooked egg. It doesn't actually matter. Eggs are great for dogs.
Street city officials are here today. There are people up the street in the housing development who are making phone calls every week in the city. Karens up the street that are working overtime with the city with lies to put us out.
All right, Seiko. Seiko. It's kind of already going where I was basically about to go. He says, nah, it's called building codes and HOA rules. Now, honestly, when I saw this the other day, like, I feel really bad for the situation, because although I don't necessarily agree with everything that Philip Mitchell says and does from what I've been seeing from afar, I'm not a digital disciple, but I have watched quite a few sermons. You know, it's never good news when a church that is preaching a lot of truth, you know, encounters this kind of turmoil. However, that being said, him calling these people Karens, I think that is one of the problems that I'm seeing as a repeated issue, I think, from this platform, from this ministry. Like, these people are trying to do their job, and y'all went from a few hundred people to like 6,000 people in less than a year. And that's like I guess a good problem to have until it really becomes a problem like it did. And I don't know because I'm not there. I wasn't there when it was just 200 people. So I don't want to judge and say like this is a move of God or it's not a move of God. But I don't know. Like, I go to a church and the size is probably like, we might have 150 people come every Sunday. If it went from 150 to 6,000 within like months, I think a lot of what made it that, you know, that church, my church, I don't think it would feel like that anymore. And I think I would probably be like, man, I kind of miss it when it was just us 200 folks, you know what I'm saying? But I don't know. But I don't think it's a good idea to demonize the people who are in the neighborhood, who maybe they can't get in and out of their house like they used to maybe go to work or to the grocery store or whatever, because you have 6,000 people showing up to go to church on Sunday. I don't even know, like, the building codes. I don't know, fam. Like, it just seems like he jumped to, they're Karens, they're this, they're like, you don't have to call them names. I understand the frustration, and maybe some people are picking on y'all, but it sounds like y'all weren't getting picked on until 6,000 people started showing up. From what I can tell, but I don't know. People who, if you're watching and you go to 2819, what, you let me know what I may or may not be missing here. But that's what I gather. And I don't know. I just think, although 2819 has gotten a lot of things right, what I love about Philip Mitchell and what drew me to him initially was, again, his he loves teaching holiness, living a righteous life. Those are wonderful things. But then he'll say like kind of strange things, like, kind of sexual-ish stuff. And I know he's speaking against fornication and he's speaking against adultery and against lust and all that. But when you're using terms that really aren't appropriate, I'm like, I don't think that's really a good precedent to set from the pulpit. And so I've talked about this a couple of times on the channel too. Like, I posted a video on Instagram like, hey, you guys, don't y'all think it's kind of not really a great idea for a pastor to say this from the pulpit? Now, I'm like, men's conference, I might see that different, or men's breakfast or something like that, or men's outing. I think those kind of conversations, maybe there's room for that there. But when you're addressing the entire church, the body of Christ, especially, this is a whole bunch of women in the audience too. And you're saying stuff like, people are swinging on the private parts of prophets. I don't think that's really good. So yeah, that was a problem. But I'm sorry. I think what I was trying to talk about the things that I like about 2819. I think that he's done a good job of drawing a lot of young men, black men, to the church. He's done a good job of, getting young people excited about church again in an era where people are just like, I'm done with church. I think William Murphy, although he thought turning his church into a club was going to like bring in probably a lot of people and make him more popular, from what I can remember on TikTok, a lot of people, and I don't even know if they were Christians at the time, they were like, you know what? I don't go to church often, but when I go to church, I want to go to what feels like church. I don't want to go to a club. So it kind of had the adverse effect. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So then when Philip Mitchell goes viral for this, I'm like, I see it as a reaction or a response. People are tired of whatever that is, calling itself Christianity, because it's really empty. If you go into a church every Sunday, well, of course, they're singing gospel music and someone's talking from a pulpit and they're, doing all the soundbitey things, but there's no substance to it. It's like, it gets old after a while. But then you hear this man getting up there faithfully every Sunday, like, oh man, like, y'all know it's wrong to have sex outside of marriage. Y'all do know that's wrong, right? Y'all know. So I'm like, okay, that's good. However, preaching about behavior modification is important, but I wonder, how much Christology is being preached there. Like, I know a lot of people, every Sunday you see like a lot of, the charismatic things, the speaking in tongues, the singing, the crying, all that kind of worshipy stuff, which is not inherently wrong, nothing necessarily wrong with that. But like, when I posted what I said, the question that I said on Instagram, the amount of just vitriol and attacks that I got because I just asked the question, I think kind of shows that his style of preaching may be attracting young people who really do want to know God and know the gospel. But I do think it's also drawing really mean, vicious people who are misrepresenting the gospel and who don't understand. They think that mean is the gospel. I think that's why a lot of people like Geno Jennings. Geno Jennings is a flaming heretic, but he looks like a pastor. He looks like a preacher. So, people are drawn to that. Now, I'm going to give Philip Mitchell credit. I don't think he's a heretic or anything. From what I can remember from their church website, like, it's Orthodox, like there's nothing wrong with it. But I will say, I've seen him invite like a prosperity type preacher to that church. And I know that preacher because that preacher is from my hometown. And that church is a oneness church. So I'm just wondering, like, there's a disconnect somewhere. So I said all that to say, I'm just concerned that people, a lot of these folks are getting real zealous about this pastor and about this movement, but still kind of getting lost in the weeds as far as what is the gospel? What does it mean to walk life as a Christian, not just doing the right things, but knowing who God is, knowing his attributes, knowing his character, loving people. Like, you can't just attack every person who asks a question about your pastor and think that's going to be a good witness for the gospel. Because for me, that just kind of raises like red flags. I'm wondering if this is moving into the direction of more like a personality cult, right? So there's a church can be a cult for a couple reasons. One, if their theology is completely heretical, right? So like Geno Jennings is pastoring a cult. But there's another type of cult, a personality cult, where the church could be completely orthodox, but people are so consumed with the person and the personality that it's like that person becomes the end all be all. So I'm concerned about that. You know, anyway, I hope I'm explaining myself here as to the best of my ability, but I just fear that we've got like a lot of young people flocking there because they're excited, because it's a movement, because social media, like obviously social media is a factor here. Now I'm sure some people are led there maybe because they needed to hear Pastor Mitchell's his style of preaching, right? Like I'm sure people have gotten saved and baptized there at 2819 because they do a lot of good things. But then social media also like kind of fuels the fire too, right? I don't know if y'all remember this, but like a year ago, there was a little something known as the Asbury Revival. Y'all remember that? And if you don't, I'm about to jog your memory. So let's go right here. Let's talk about the Asbury Revival. Because when it was a thing, it was a thing.
Thousands are taking part in a days-long church service at a private Christian university in Kentucky. Weeks long, you're right. The service started February 8th at Asbury University, February 8th, and it hasn't stopped. Since then, the small school near Lexington has been in nonstop worship, attracting thousands of visitors. Kelsey Kernstein's here to explain what is going on and when or if it might end, Kelsey.
Adrian and Mitch, this is really just a shocking moment, and people are calling it a historic movement. Nearly 2 weeks of nonstop worshiping at Asbury University in Kentucky. It has now sparked thousands of people to travel to the small private college campus from all over the world to experience what they are calling a Christian revival.
Moment like you never had before in their entire lives, oh God. You are in this place, you are in this place richly. We can feel your presence like a blanket. It covers us all, oh Lord. And
And what started as just a normal service on February 8th at the college chapel turned into continuous around-the-clock worshiping. Now, students say something changed in the atmosphere of the room, where participants say they felt a revival of spiritual energy. The word then spread on social media, and since then, tens of thousands have traveled to Wilmore, Kentucky, a town of just 6,000.
Honestly, when you walk in here and people are singing and reading scripture and talking and just praying together and just have smiles on their faces, you really do. Like, the atmosphere in here, like, it's palpable. I mean, it's in the air. The Holy Spirit is here.
And what started as just a beautiful movement turned into some controversy and community tension over the influx of people in town, safety and security concerns. The president of Asbury putting out a statement no longer allowing 24-hour public worshiping, offering the final public service this Wednesday. Now, this movement, it has led to the emergence of several other revivals at college campuses across the nation.
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your television provider. And don't forget to click.
Okay, so I said all that to say Asbury Revival was a thing, and it just kept trickling off into these other things. And the next thing you know, you've got thousands of people from across the entire nation coming to this town of 6,000. And what are they doing? Parking in people's yards, and you got heretics from YouTube showing up, and it just got really weird and it got haywire. So haywire that Dr. Craig Keener did a response video because he was not at Asbury University. I think there's an Asbury Seminary, which is like across the street, but not technically the same school, if I'm not mistaken. So I just wanted to, I'm not sure if y'all have seen this, but Craig Keener said this a few years ago, or what was this? This was 2 years ago. Okay.
Normally we have chapel every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 a.m. for about 45 to 50 minutes. But what happened on February 8th, Wednesday morning, was that the gospel choir sang something, apparently it was like spontaneous, or spontaneously requested at the end of the chapel. And afterwards, you know, sometimes some students stick around to sing a couple songs and then they go. So after the chapel, the gospel choir had gotten down from the stage and just some people wanted some more singing. They sang another song and then they didn't stop. I mean, it kept going. And as it kept going, eventually some other students came back from class, came into the chapel. Just people were coming in until they had a few hundred people. And it was that evening when my wife said, "Hey, you've been praying for revival. What are you doing sitting downstairs?" That was the first I knew about it. So we hurried up and went over there. I was over there about 3 hours that night and 2.5 hours maybe a couple nights later. And then some more nights and days after that. It got a lot harder to get into the chapel after that because somehow word spread. It may have been partly our fault for Facebook posts. It wasn't, nobody was trying to advertise it. It wasn't something where we were trying to let the whole world know. Some of us, we'd just been praying for years for revival at Asbury. at the seminary, at the university, in our community. I mean, I was praying for it globally, but I didn't. Well, I wasn't expecting globally all to come here. They're trying to restrain so many people coming here right now because there's simply not enough room for everybody. Last I heard, the police are actually telling people not to come into town. They're trying to keep people from coming into town because they say the town is at capacity. It's a town of about 6,000 people, and we had maybe 15,000 or something like that recently, visitors. So, it's anyway. The Holy Spirit is not limited to one place, and happily, in a sense, it's not the it's not the Asbury Revival anymore. It's spread to other campuses, and that's what it's about. It's not meant to be kept in one place. But just, I need to talk about theologically what this all means, and I'm just using the word revival because that's the word that's often used. I actually think there's more precise wording that could be used.
Okay, I know y'all probably like, what in the world they got to do with anything? What does this have to do with anything? The point is, the Asbury Revival that just started off as like a small, intimate thing became a whole ordeal, and it caused a major problem. Now, I mean, I'm not saying the whole thing was a bad thing. I'm just saying as far as like the traffic and all that, it became a thing. The nationwide, it just became a spectacle. And so eventually, the schools shut it down. People went back home. Life went back to normal. And I think that was a good thing, right? But as you'll see, and I've had Craig Keener on the channel a couple times before. He's so smart. He's written some excellent books. He's a charismatic. I think Seiko said that here too. But notice he didn't have to attack anyone to get his point across. Like he didn't say, "Oh, these Karen neighbors." It's just like, well, why would you say that about people? Think about it. Think about if you were living in that neighborhood. And I don't know whether you're a Christian or not, you hear a pastor say something like that. You're like, man, I know as for me in my house, I would not go to that church. Don't call me a Karen because I'm calling the city, because man, like I got to get out of my driveway so I can go to work or go to my own church or something. Right. I just think that is kind of insane. All right. Let me go back to the comments. Seiko said something else that I thought was interesting. What do you say? When pastors lack discernment and publicly endorse people like Joni Lamb and Lecrae is not a good look. Okay, so the Joni Lamb thing, I saw something on his Instagram this morning that I wasn't quite sure of the context, so I'm going to share this just because this is related to the thing and because Seiko just posted this. But he said, Dallas, Texas, Daystar live with Joni Lamb. In my weakness, I appreciate your prayers. I have no idea what this means. I don't know if he's going to go live on Daystar. I have no idea what this means. And as y'all know, Daystar has gone through a lot of its own challenges over the last couple months with the whole thing. So I don't know what this means. I guess that remains to be seen. Ooh, super chat from Pastor Booker. He says, nighty night, calling it a day. God bless you. God bless you, Pastor Booker. Thank you so much for dropping in. Let me see. Was there something else that Seiko said? Oh yeah, he said, yeah, Craig Keener is a charismatic too, so he ain't hating. He ain't hating at all, right? So all this stuff, people flock to these movements. It happens all the time. Y'all remember when Popeyes, everybody was going to get their Popeyes chicken sandwich because somebody uploaded a video on YouTube or TikTok or something that said you got to try one of these Popeyes chicken sandwiches. Next thing you know, it's going to take you 2 hours to get in line to get a sandwich. Why was it? We had to have that sandwich. It's just word of mouth. People, we flock to these things. Kind of like when Forrest Gump was running and I was running. Forrest Gump was running. And then he had all these group of people following him. And one day he was just like, all right, I'm done. And so he just turns around, looks at the crowd like, all right, I'm going to go home now. And they're like, what you mean? This is human nature. So again, I'm not saying any of this is bad. I feel really bad for the whole situation. I don't know. Me personally, this is my opinion and y'all can take it or leave it. I personally think that maybe like, he should say, hey, if you were coming here a year ago when it was just us, our small group, like we want you to continue to come. If you just showed up 6 or 3 months ago because of the Acts 242 conference or something like that, maybe go find another solid church in the Atlanta area. You've been here long enough, like go serve somewhere else. And maybe once we get our building, a larger building at capacity, then come back. I think that would probably make more sense than let's just try to rush and raise $500,000. My goodness, $500,000, man. That's a lot. But anyway, so what else? I saw something else in the live chat. We got some digital disciples in here. Oh, what's up, Susie? What's up, Susie Q? It's always good to see you, sis. What did Emerald say? Emerald says emergency vehicles have to be able to get in and out of the neighborhood. We are meeting at school. Okay. So are you, Emerald, do you go to 2819? Kristen says he went on there and it only got 2,000 views. Maybe I missed a comment before that, so I do apologize. Oh, okay. Proverbs 7. He was live on Daystar today and preached there. Oh, okay. So now y'all teach me something. I didn't know anything about that. Okay. That brings context. But let's see. Miss E says, I feel for him and wish he had waited for God to help him and the church. Okay. Breezy. Hi, I left a message regarding being saved and taking your life. Would you make it to heaven? Oh, I remember that question. I actually answered this question in a video a few years ago. And I took that video down, not because I think I was wrong, but because I think it's such a sensitive topic. I would want to know why you are asking that question. Okay. I want to know first why you're asking that question. So maybe how about you email me, misstitus2@gmail.com, and we'll talk from there. Okay. All right. Okay. He preached today on Daystar. So y'all giving me all the tea. Daystar may have been a bad move for a pastor. Yeah, because Daystar hosts a lot of false teachers, prosperity teachers, and all this and that. Now, you know, TBN does the same thing, but TBN also has some good people that are featured on there. Christian TV is just a weird kind of place. But oh, what's up, brother Reggie? What's up, man? Okay. Oh, Tristan, you're too kind. Thank you so much. Wendy says, I honestly don't think his ask was a lot considering how many folks he attracts online. That's $5,000 giving $100 pretty easy, but I was hoping that he'd wait to see what God would do before going to Daystar. Interesting. Okay. All right. So yeah, I think there was a comment I was looking for where, you know, there's a couple people saying like, listen, he preaches the Bible every single Sunday. Like, what is the issue? And I think he does a good job of teaching ethics typically. I've heard him talk about the Trinity. Now, I was going back and forth with somebody on Facebook. I was like, I don't know, man. I'm kind of wondering, like, are you a undercover oneness person because you had this oneness guy preach at your church? But anyway, so then a few sermons later, he like articulated the Trinity. I was like, okay, he's clearly not undercover oneness. So, all right, that was debunked. So I'm not saying he's a heretic, but I'm not sure if there's enough Christology coming across from the pulpit. And maybe he'll get there because he has been in this Wisdom and Wonder series for a long time. But I think a lot of people there are learning, like, basically, you know, all the charismatic things to kind of make all the things in your life happen the way you want it to happen. But I think you're kind of setting people up for failure when you teach them all this experiential stuff and living your life right stuff, but not enough of, you know, like, who is God? What is the gospel? How do you evangelize? And again, maybe this is happening because I've never been there. Okay. So if that is happening, praise God. I'm just saying, based on what I'm seeing on the internet, based on what I'm seeing from Sunday to Sunday, it's a lot of behavior modification, but not a lot of, you know, well-rounded, like, theology coming from the pulpit. Nothing bad being said per se, other than like the, you know, what did he say? Talking about just the way he talks about not fornicating. I do think he's crossed some lines, just like Michael Todd has crossed a few lines, just like Tim Ross has crossed quite a few lines, right? When you say these things and then it becomes more acceptable and then more pastors think, oh, okay, well, if they did it, then I can do it. And now you just got like a whole bunch of people saying weird stuff from the pulpit and pouring syrup on Bibles and, you know, all the theatrics. You don't need all that. Like, just preach the truth of the gospel. You don't have to say nasty stuff from the pulpit to be, you know, to be heard. Like, I heard him a year ago when he didn't say anything nasty, or at least at the time I hadn't heard him say anything nasty. So I'm like, why are we doing this now? Okay. Wisdom and Wonder series is a 2-year journey, and it is a journey. Mike Todd, that's a name I haven't really talked about a whole lot in recent years. But anyway, so I said all that to say, as far as the doctrine and stuff coming from the pulpit, it's not heresy. So please, I hope no one watching me here is hearing me say Philip Mitchell is a false teacher. That is not at all what I'm saying. But I do think that there seems to be a gap between maybe his knowledge. I want to believe that he's got a lot more head knowledge than the congregants. And that's not even a slight against the congregants. My pastor has a lot more knowledge than I do, right? That's why they're the pastor. But it's like the stuff needs to be trickling down. And I'm not sure it's always trickling down appropriately. I think this is really a problem across a lot of churches in America, not just 2819. But there's like a disconnect. Like people, we know that as Christians, we're supposed to live a certain way, but we're still not able to discern one heretic from the next because we know behavior, but we don't know theology, or we don't know Christology, right? So we know a lot about salvation, but we don't know okay, so just because someone also believes that fornication is wrong, that doesn't mean that they're Christians. Like, yeah, like other cults, I'm saying like a lot, and that's annoying. You can teach good ethics and look preachy, again, like Geno Jennings or Stephen Darby or even Tiffany Montgomery, right? You have a lot of people who look really preachy and teach a lot of fundamental Christian things that are true, Bible things that are true, but there's still not really a strong gospel message protruding. Now, I'm not saying that's the issue with 2819 per se, but there's a huge problem with doctrine. And I think in the Black church, we really gotta do better at this. And I know the Black church institution is not the only evangelical church that has issues, but because I grew up in the Black church and I love it so much, and I would love to see a revival of like strong theologians in the Black church. I just kind of wanted to bring up this article because I know a lot of people are going to be mad at me and leave me all kind of interesting comments and stuff. But I wanted to go through this article that I thought was very, very good. Okay, and I want y'all to go back and read it. I'm not sure how far we'll get into it tonight because it's already 10:30. Okay, and it's about Orthodoxy in the Black church. Okay, all right. Let me see. What have I missed? Christian Doc says a lot of his preaching feels performative and disingenuous. Child, you know what? It's a lot going on over there at 2819. Again, there's a lot of people there who they know like what to do during worship. They know to do the call and response thing. And I don't have an issue with that kind of thing, but there's more to being a Christian than, going to church and going to the altar every Sunday. Like some people, you feel like, man, you got saved 2 weeks ago, you're getting saved again. Like, so obviously what are you not getting? Because if you get saved, you're saved. You don't have to get resaved you know what I mean? So anyway, so is Orthodoxy strong in the Black church? Let's talk about it. So this is an article that was written by Jerry L. Buckner. This came out in 2009, but then he revamped it in 2023. And I'm sorry the writing is so small, but hopefully y'all stick with me. Okay. So he says, based on my experience as an African-American pastor. So this is a Black pastor, okay? Based on my experience as an African-American pastor, teacher, and speaker at various Black churches, it's my opinion that the Black church in America today does not have a strong commitment to Christian orthodoxy in doctrine and practice. I'll share 8 reasons why I think this is the case. 8 reasons. Y'all ready? Put on your seatbelts because here we go. The leading reason for a lack of Christian orthodoxy in the Black church is that its pastors lack a formal Orthodox theological education. On one hand, the majority of Black pastors, for reasons that will be discussed, have no Bible college or seminary training at all. These pastors, uneducated in Christian orthodoxy, nevertheless are highly respected by their congregations as teachers of theology. So, like I said before, I grew up in the Black church. I loved growing up in the Black church and the culture. And the pastor who was my pastor for like the first 15, 20 years of my life, he was not seminary trained, but he was a sound teacher. He wasn't word of faith. He wasn't really hyper charismatic. I mean, there might have been a Sunday or two where things maybe got a little bit more amped than others, but for the most part, we were pretty chill. And he encouraged us to read the Bible, but he was not seminary trained. So I'm hoping y'all are not hearing me say, well, if your pastor don't have a theology degree, then he's not a good pastor. That's not what I'm saying. But the point being made in this article is that far too many pastors in the black church are not theologically trained. And I can honestly say, I don't think I've ever had a black pastor who had a seminary degree, ever. And I've seen a lot of mixture of, from the church that I grew up in, that was solid. But I've probably been to a lot more churches where stuff was more weird. And I'm sorry, it just is what it is. I'm doing this podcast, this live stream, because I'm hoping that this can start a conversation and hopefully motivate more of us to really dig into our theology and helping our churches get more equipped to deal with this kind of stuff. Anyway, okay. On the other hand, many of those black pastors who do have a formal theological education were educated at theologically liberal schools. There was a time in America when conservative Christian colleges and seminaries didn't welcome black students. This unfortunate situation existed even as late as the 1960s and caused the few blacks who could afford a formal education to go to liberal colleges and seminaries. These liberal schools have aggressively recruited blacks through the years. Many blacks, moreover, can't afford an education at a conservative Bible college or seminary where the tuition is high or often high. Liberal schools have given out more scholarships than conservative schools. Consequently, there are a number of liberal black theologians today who have written books that have influenced people in the black church away from orthodoxy. Liberalism, therefore, has become very evident in the black church. And I see that. You go to some of our churches and it's a lot of politics, and it's usually like far left politics. And amazingly enough, the theology kind of is just not good. That it's just not good at all. So, all right, let me see what y'all talking about. Ike Moore says, nah, the digital disciples coming for you. And they will. Pray for me. Pray for me. Okay, where else we at? Common Sense says, most all black churches I've gone to, pastors have a doctorate in theology. Well, that is amazing. That hasn't been my experience. I mean, that's awesome. But I do see now, there just seems to be maybe this is just my anecdotal experience because I just started getting into theology 4 or 5 years ago. I'm sure this has always been a thing where Christians have been getting theologically trained. But just in my personal experience, I just haven't seen a lot of that. But that's good that you have. Okay. What you got to say, Seiko? Oh, Seiko says, Jerry Buckner is spitting facts. All right. Okay. Let's keep going. So you got a lot of these liberal schools accepting blacks, but teaching them poo-poo theology. Ask me how I know. I've talked to some of these people. It's very sad. Okay. Second, pastors who have not had Pastors who have not had a formal theological education are mentoring many young black ministers in doing ministry. This has caused a chain reaction in the black church from one generation to the next. These young black ministers are falling into the same patterns of teaching unorthodox doctrine and practice as their mentors. The cycle has to be broken. This is where affluent evangelical churches and conventions can step up and provide opportunities for young black ministers to attend conservative Bible colleges and seminaries that can train them in Christian orthodoxy, thus assisting them to change the current pattern. So I like that he's offering some solutions to this problem, right? Okay, so if the issue is some of our people don't have access to get the education that we need, which in this day and age, it's almost like we can go because Sarah Jakes Roberts can go to seminary. Tiffany Montgomery can go to seminary. And I'm sorry, this ain't even about complementary egalitarian. I'm just saying because those are the first few names that popped up on my brain because I just did videos on them. But what I'm saying is rich internet pastors have no excuse at this point, or preachers or whatever, evangelists, whatever. Y'all have the opportunity to go to school and get knowledge if you want to have a microphone and talk to people. Michael Todd, why you ain't got no theology degree, fam? You need to go to school. Okay. Third, one of the fundamental problems in the black church has been a lack of discipleship training. And I think this is probably a problem in just the American church worldwide. And that's another thing Philip Mitchell complains a lot about is the American church. And when I hear him talk like that, it grieves me because although I know that there's plenty of problems in our churches here in America, there's plenty of good that's coming out of the churches in America. So I don't think it's really helpful to so consistently say the churches in America, y'all this, y'all that. They, you know, people over there, they got it, but y'all ain't got it. I'm just like, why are we causing this kind of dissension? Because I'm a part of the church in America. And I think I'm doing my best to serve God. And I know some really godly people. And, you know, there's plenty of pastors out here before Philip Mitchell came along. There will be after there is no Philip Mitchell. Like, the church ain't going nowhere. God got the church covered throughout the entire world, including America. God loves the American church, right? Anyway, sorry, that was a little rabbit trail. Okay. So, did we already read this one? Third one is fundamental problems in the black church, lack of discipleship. Okay. Fourth, a fourth and important reason for the lack of Christian orthodoxy in the black church is the lack of focus on teaching Christian doctrine. Okay, this is where we get into the nuts and bolts of it. Oh, Tyler pulled out a name. Brian Carn has been doing a revival or something these past few days. That's another one who could definitely benefit from going to getting taught from a seminary. Okay. The essential doctrines of the historic Christian faith, such as the Trinity, the deity of Christ, the vicarious atonement of Christ, the bodily resurrection of Christ, and the second coming of Christ, are not being strongly taught in most black churches. You know what we're learning? We're learning don't have sex before you get married, Jesus rose, and pray in tongues a lot of times. Now, if that's if you're from like a Pentecostal charismatic type of situation. Again, I'm not saying that's wrong, but if that's basically like the gist of it, every Sunday you hear get saved, get saved, get saved. I'm like, man, at some point for me, like going to church got really boring because I'm like, man, I guess I just come here every Sunday to hear about salvation, but I'm already saved. So, like, who is this for? I'm not saying you can't put the gospel in every Sunday, but if every message is ultimately about salvation, it's just like, man, like that's it. Like the whole point of becoming a Christian is just getting saved and that's it. Like, okay. All right. Sorry. That was another little rabbit trail. Okay. I found, for example, that most churches where I've taught the doctrine of the Trinity have not previously been educated on this doctrine. When I tell y'all, the first time I heard a message on the Trinity was in a predominantly white church. Never heard it growing up. I heard the word a lot, had no idea what it meant. You know, when I started thinking about, well, what does that word mean? I assumed a oneness understanding. Well, probably because I heard people talk about like the water example or whatever. So I'm just like, oh yeah, well, I guess God is like water, right? So I just assumed a oneness understanding, didn't really think about asking anybody because I'm just like, yeah, that sounds about right. But it wasn't until I went to a white church that I heard it. Now, again, I'm not trying to like say, oh, white churches, they good about everything. No, we're broad brushing here. Jerry's broad brushing. I'm gonna put it on Jerry. We just talking about an issue that's clearly an issue that's fixable. Okay. All right. So that was just my experience. Okay. I found, for example, that most churches where I've taught the doctrine of the Trinity have not previously been educated on this doctrine. Many black churches don't even have a written statement of faith. Now, I think I talked about this in another video, but like I was going on a rampage to all the black churches in my hometown just to see like, what are they talking about? One of them was oneness, and the preaching every Sunday is like prosperity, right? Travis Green, he from my hometown, like, right, you ain't really getting too much there. And even if the statement of faith is right, I can't even remember. I don't think they had a statement of faith. I can't remember if they had a statement of faith, but Travis Green going to preach at the one church in LA with Sarah Jakes Roberts and them. So it's just like, okay, you preaching at a church in South Carolina, but then you're also going to preach at a church that doesn't have a statement of faith and the pastors are heretical, and like, you don't see a problem with that? Okay, so there's that. You got a lot of word of faith in my home. You just got a lot of stuff. And statement of faith, if they're there at all, a lot of them aren't good. And some of them have good statement of faiths, but it doesn't come across from the pulpit. They're still preaching, you know, the Joel Osteen stuff or the word of faith stuff, prosperity gospel stuff. So anyway, there's a huge gap. Okay, there's no training on the essentials of the Christian faith. It's not enough just to preach about the crucifixion and that Jesus saves. All the essentials of the Christian faith have to be taught. Jesus preached to unbelievers and he taught believers. In the typical black church, however, the pastor preaches to believers but doesn't really teach anyone. Again, I'm bringing this up because as I look through these comments every day on these videos, and I see people who think that G. Craig Lewis, Stephen Darby, Geno Jennings are all saying the same thing, although they are all from different thoughts, right? So Stephen Darby was a formerly Christian pastor who began to drift off into Hebrewism. Geno Jennings is a oneness Pentecostal heretic who condemns Hebrewism, right? So Geno and Darby fundamentally don't agree on a major issue. And then G. Craig Lewis, as far as I understand, and y'all can correct me, I know Seiko probably knows way more about G. Craig Lewis than I do. From what I understand, he's a Trinitarian, like it seems to be an Orthodox church where they still kind of have some interesting ideas, but I think on paper at least is truly Orthodox. If I'm wrong about that, y'all let me know in the comments. But I said all that to say, people are not able to recognize the difference between Orthodoxy and heresy because we're not being taught. Okay. All right. 6th, the majority of black pastors, I hope y'all can't see that. There it goes. Okay. The majority of black pastors are not adequately available to fulfill their roles as ministers. Most of them have to work a full-time job along with pastoring. Many work 40 hours or more per week in addition to their ministry responsibilities. It's the exception, not the rule, when a black pastor doesn't have to work another job along with pastoring. Pastors are not able to preach, teach, evangelize, or counsel adequately if they're gone from the church working other jobs. I know when I was growing up, my pastor had a full-time job at one point, but he was eventually able to leave that job to pastor full-time. But I think most of the churches that I went to, the pastors all had like a full-time gig. Most of them. There were a few exceptions, but most of them did. All right. What's going on in the live chat? Miss E says, I'm in a discipleship training at my church here in Syracuse, New York, but it's multicultural. Okay. All right. What else? Man, I'm missing a lot of content. Seiko says, G. Craig Lewis, hold my macchiato. Okay. Okay, Seiko. What else? Stephen really drifted off into the twilight. Okay. All right. I don't think I missed anything too crazy. All right. So y'all still rocking with me. Okay. 7th. I thought this was a good one. That still kind of, it'll bring things back around. Okay. 7th. There are too many auxiliary programs and activities in the black church. Many of these programs are focused on tradition rather than on God, and the church's energy ends up being spent on mere activity rather than on the real work of Christ. Most black pastors extend the right hand of fellowship to new members and then ask with which auxiliary they want to work. There's no mention of salvation, soul winning, Christ, or doctrinal orientation. The church has plenty of programs, but it's lost its mission. So you got people, you know, they're doing a lot of work, but you don't even know if these people saved for real. Like they showed up because it's like, I know I need to be in church, but do you know Jesus? We'll talk about that later eventually. Like what? Okay. All right. There's also too much focus on socializing, having dinners, selling dinners, and so on. These social activities, moreover, are often mixed with non-Christian practices. These social activities are often mixed with non-Christian practices such as Eastern Star and Masonry. And I know Buckner didn't add this, but I would include Greek organizations, right? Like what somebody said earlier, William Murphy had the Greeks doing their strolling and stuff in the sanctuary. But he says, these social activities are often mixed with non-Christian practices like Eastern Star and Masonry, which can kill sound doctrine in a church, because that's what these organizations are all about. Like it's the road to deconstruction. Like eventually Masonry, the Masonic temple becomes your church a lot of times. And yeah, I've read 2 or 3 books on the topic. Freemasonry is nothing no Christian should be associated with, because there's a lot of syncretism and it's just not good. Okay. Not at all compatible with our faith. Okay. The church is often involved in so many things other than essential Christianity that the work of the Holy Spirit in the church is hindered. People can't grow in sound Christian doctrine and practice without the Holy Spirit working in their lives. There needs to be balance and discernment when running these auxiliary programs in order for the black church to fulfill its mission of ministering to the body and reaching out to the needs of the community. All right, he says a final reason for a lack of orthodoxy is that the black church has placed too much of an emphasis on the number of baptisms rather than actual converts and disciples. This emphasis, which is found in certain denominations as well, encourages an unhealthy spirit of competition among churches in which visible evidence of growth measured in the number of baptisms is all important. So you can say, I baptized 2,000 people in 2024. It's like, okay. And okay, if a church experiences the lowest number of baptisms in its association or convention, it makes the pastor look bad. A pastor can even be put out of his church if it doesn't have a certain number of baptisms each year. The vital teaching and training of individual converts is often overlooked, therefore, because the pastor is too preoccupied with the number of baptisms. And y'all know people like that. You talk to people, you ask them, are you a Christian? They say, yeah, I got baptized when I was 8. And you'd be like, yeah, but are you a Christian? Oh, yeah, I got baptized. Or yeah, I go to church. It's just like, but are you born again? They're like, well, sure. Yeah, sure. So, these are issues that we have to address. Because if you're going to church every Sunday, but you don't even know if you're saved or not, like, why? It shouldn't be like that. Okay. Last paragraph. Thank y'all for still rocking with me. Last paragraph. How can Christian orthodoxy become strong in the black church? I see a multifaceted solution. The evangelical white church needs to get more involved with the black church by helping black pastors to be adequately educated and discipled. Scripture commands the church to do this in 2 Timothy 2:15. The evangelical white church could help provide financial scholarships for blacks who can't afford to attend evangelical Bible colleges and seminaries. Black pastors need to be educated so they can in turn educate and disciple their congregations. Sound education and discipleship will help break the current cycle of unsound doctrine among pastors. Christian orthodoxy will become stronger in the black church through education and discipleship of its members as well. The black church has an obligation to institute discipleship programs in addition to baptism. Both are part of the Great Commission. It's important for new members to participate in auxiliary programs, but more important, they must participate in discipleship training classes. In order for Christian orthodoxy to be strong in the black church, it's vitally important that its members, especially new members, learn the essentials of the historic Christian faith. A strong foundation will also help them not to be deceived by aberrant and heretical groups and teaching. My mentor, Dr. Walt Martin once said, and y'all know I love Dr. Walt Martin. I can't talk tonight. Dr. Walter Martin. I love him. He wrote The Kingdom of the Cults, and he's got plenty of really good videos. And he did that series on Freemasonry that we did that live reaction to when he was on John Ankerberg. Anyway, my mentor, Dr. Walter Martin, once said, you have to become so familiar with the original that when the counterfeit passes by you, you'll be able to detect it immediately. This familiarity with and practice of Orthodox Christian doctrines is what builds a strong, well-balanced, and healthy church. Education provides the key for success in this area in the black church. We made it through the whole thing. Yay. Okay, all right. So let me see what y'all got to say about that. I thought that was a really good article. Again, it's called Is Orthodoxy Strong in the Black Church by Jerry L. Buckner. So maybe y'all can, talk to your pastors about that kind of thing. Talk to people at your churches about it. And once you've gone to a church and maybe you feel like you've gotten more equipped, I think it would be a good idea for us to start back infiltrating our own churches. Like maybe go to a church for a while. Like maybe it might be a little bit like Word of Faithy or super traditional or super political. But if you are at a church where the pastor is willing to, help, if he's willing to allow change, if he's willing to help you help other people based on your knowledge, like I feel like that's a church that you can salvage. But if you say, hey, pastor, like you teaching oneness theology and the Bible shows that God is triune, like we need to fix that. If he says, no, we're sticking with the oneness thing, I think at that point you got to go. You got to find you another church, find another black church to infiltrate because that ain't finna work. We should not be putting up with heresy, okay? Far too many of us have cozied on up to this stuff. And I think he talked about that in one of these. Did he say that? Maybe I missed that. There was a part in this article where he just said like a lot of pastors just buddy up with heretics. Oh, I missed number 5. Let's go back to number 5. I thought I missed this is a very important, where is it? There we go. This is probably the most important paragraph in this whole thing. Okay, he says number 5. We skipped number 5. The lack of emphasis on Christian essentials in the Black church has opened the door for groups with cultic, aberrant, or heretical teaching to enter. Some of these groups include Word Faith teachers, Oneness Pentecostal groups, and counterfeit revival groups. When Black pastors lack the training needed to recognize theological error, they compromise themselves and their congregations by fellowshipping with those who do not hold to sound Christian doctrine. And that was one of the things I brought up earlier about 28:19. You know, Philip Mitchell might be a sound teacher, but why are you, having someone whose statement of faith on their website is oneness? 3 manifestations is on the website. Why are you going to have them come preach? Either like you didn't vet them, or I can only guess, like the only thing I can speculate is you didn't vet them, or you knew, but you still thought, well, that's not a big deal. So I want to give him the benefit of the doubt and think he probably just didn't know that the website said that. He didn't ask those questions. But still, you still have this person coming to preach at your church, and they don't have the basic, they don't have the Christian essential basics down back, right? Okay. So I think that's something I'm glad that he brought up in this article. He says, this is why education is so critical. Historically, the Black church has emphasized social issues, including racism and poverty. When there's a lack of training and discernment, the church can easily join hands with aberrant or even cultic groups that embrace these same issues. In the area of poverty, for example, the Word Faith teachers emphasize health and wealth. This way of thinking attracts many in the Black church who have lived with poverty all their lives. Guaranteed prosperity sounds very attractive. In the area of racism, many in the Black church who claim to be Christians have joined forces with unorthodox teachers and groups such as Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam in activities such as the Million Man March. They do these things in the name of justice, but in the process, they have laid aside their doctrinal beliefs and instead linked credibility to these teachers and groups and provided a platform for them to spread unorthodox teaching. And that's the problem. That's the problem we're seeing in the gospel music industry, right? Like, I don't know what anybody believes anymore. It seems like there's no standards. So Fred Hammond goes to what, or at least used to attend T.D. Jakes' church, again, which is oneness, doing a concert with Kirk Franklin, who is a Trinitarian, doing a concert with Yolanda Adams, who is basically New Thought, because she was what's his name? Carlton Pearson. Like, Yolanda Adams is basically as progressive as you can get at this point. So at some point, when are we going to say, listen, I can love you as a person and still consider you my friend and say, I'm not going to do anything ministry related with you because we are not on the same page theologically. We've got to get to that point, or else we're just going to continue to confuse people. And people are obviously confused, okay? People don't know the essentials. Why is it that I've been in church my whole life and I didn't really know that Christian essentials existed until about like 4 or 5 years ago? That's a problem. Again, it's fixable, but it's still a problem. All right, let me go back in these comments. What's up, ATL all day? What's up, sis? Let me see what else is going on in here before we call it a night. Carter C. Gibson says, ooh, oneness be sneaky. And they do. Oneness be sneaky. Some will have no statement of faith to come off as a regular Christian church. Yeah. And so if you don't know the doctrine of the Trinity, you can't defend it, then you're not going to catch that. And honestly, I feel like just knowing the Trinity, you'll catch a heretic just like that. It, like, that in itself eradicates so many different people. You'd be like, man, I can't even listen to you, man. I can't. Seiko says, who you allow to preach in your pulpit implies to your congregants that you affirm them. That is exactly what it implies. And I think, like, if he ever stumbles on this video and says, man, my bad, like, I didn't know this pastor had a bad statement of faith, I think it would be nice to say, hey, you guys, I platformed this person, but now I realize that we're not on the same page theologically. And so my apologies. I will no longer be doing XYZ with them. But I mean, yeah, I don't know if he would ever do that, but I think that's what people should do. What does Riri say? There's too many people sitting in pews stuck on stupid and believing. Buy a paper Bible or crack open your dusty Bible and read the entire Bible over and over again. Okay, Riri. All right. Let's see. These comments are coming in so fast. I can't even keep up. Common Sense says this guy's focus has more of a focus on black churches. Why is his focus not on all Christian churches? There is many more white churches that lack orthodoxy. Of course, there's white churches that lack orthodoxy. I think I kind of established that earlier, but I'm talking about this because in my own personal experience, this is a problem. People that know Orthodox Christianity is few and far between. Now, I can say that broadly from basically everybody I know in the entire world. It's just like most people don't really know what Christianity is, but it is a specific problem in our black church. Yeah. So, I mean, we can either complain and say, oh, well, them over there, they got those problems too. Of course they do. Of course, everybody got problems, but we really do have a problem in this area. And I don't feel bad about saying that. That's why you have so many people asking, like, where is there a good church around you? Like, how many sound, solid churches can you name in your area? Black churches. Because I know in my hometown, the biggest ones are, there's not really a lot of orthodoxy coming from the pulpits. They're just not. And people don't even know what they're supposed to be looking for. So maybe it's because I was raised in the South. Maybe this isn't a problem in other parts of the country. But where I'm from, it's definitely a problem. Okay. Okay, ATL all day says Vody did a great teaching on so-called believers and how they were wrong, even being at the Million Man March. Whoo-wee. Yeah, I think I have heard Vody talk about that. Yeah, Vody is super Calvinist. I'm not Calvinist, but I definitely have enjoyed listening to a lot of Vody sermons. Okay. John Janice says, guys, Jesus was delivering people from spirits his entire ministry. They would refer to it as a lame man or the women with issue of blood or sickness, but it referenced demons, unclean spirits. Yeah, I'm not saying that that people can't be demon possessed or anything, but that's not what we're talking about tonight. I'm just saying, if you know more about deliverance than you know about the gospel, that's a problem. And I think these days we have a lot of Christians who are more superstitious. And I was like this for a long time. I knew a lot about like Christian mysticism and superstitions and just kind of spiritual stuff, or what I thought was spiritual at the time, or like this new thought stuff, but I didn't really know the basics. So like if somebody can speak in tongues for 2 hours, oh my goodness, sorry if y'all heard that. If somebody can speak in tongues for 2 hours, but they don't know the difference between oneness and Trinitarianism, like that's not a good, that's just very pathetic. Sorry. Sorry, I'm not saying, I don't mean the person is pathetic. I'm just saying it's just bad that that's where we are. Oh, Susie Q says church finders. Okay. So, Standard of Truth podcast. Find a biblically sound church. So y'all click that link and you might be able to find a good place to go. Shout out to the Standard of Truth podcast. Cause I love Standard of Truth podcast. I love me some April. Seiko. I know Seiko. He was like, wow, you're not a Calvinist. I know I'm not a Calvinist. I agree with some facets of Calvinism, but I am not the Calvinist. Sorry to disappoint. I honestly still would categorize myself as a charismatic. I go to a non-denominational church, but I'm still like, I'm in the charismatic camp. I'm just not like all like, you know what I mean? Like we gotta rein in the crazy and let's just stick to the Bible. And then I think we'll all be all right. Okay. All right, y'all. So I've been running my mouth now for almost an hour and a half, but I hope that this helps somebody. I really hope that y'all go back and read that article. And yeah, let's make our churches better, because I love the black church and I just want to see more of us Christians, be able to speak to our people and be able to tell them the truth and just see our churches come back to life. Okay. Well, y'all have a blessed night. Happy, what was it? Oh, it was happy MLK Day we still got a few minutes of it, 68 minutes left. Happy MLK Day. Happy Inauguration Day. I know America has its issues or whatever, but I am excited about this exchange of power. Okay. All right. So it's been an interesting day, but all right. Y'all have a blessed night and I will catch y'all on the next video.